Hello, everyone. Welcome to my podcast, Out of Office. This podcast is all about the story of travel adventures and cultures through different lenses. And today's guest is Mr. Marko Martin. Good morning, Mr. Marko. So today is my absolute honor to welcome you on my podcast. You are a well-known author and also has great curiosity towards the world. First of all, could you tell me and the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thanks a lot for the invitation. It's really a pleasure and an honor to participate to your podcast. Yeah, my name is Marko Martin. I'm a novelist, I'm a writer, and I'm a traveler. And I was born in September 1970 in East Germany. And because of political problems, I left East Germany in May 89. It means before the downfall of the Berlin Wall. And then in the West, I could do everything what was not possible for me in East Germany. For instance, starting already with making my high school degree, because in East Germany, after 10 years of school, I was kicked out because I was not member of the Communist Youth Organization. And I had to work as an unskilled worker. And in the West, I made my high school degree. Then I started my studies in Berlin and in Paris. I lived for a while in Paris, and since mid of 90s, I'm back here in Berlin, what is my home base, and traveling around the world with some favorite cities, some favorite regions, and most of my books, not all of them, but most of my books are results of the experience I made during my travels.
Wonderful. Thank you for your sharing. As through my research, I can see that freedom is one of your main interests. And also, I can see that you travel a lot in Asia to see how people find their freedom in the country with not so freedom, for example, like Myanmar, Vietnam, or recently Hong Kong in event of China. What similarity did you find amongst the country and how people have their own ways to deal with freedom?
Yeah, you mentioned already a very important point for me because traveling without searching about the circumstances in the society would be impossible for me. I can't travel with voluntary blind eyes. So I'm curious and I want to know and I want to understand how people live and also how people resist. I was in September 2007, I became witness of the democratic monk protests in Myanmar, and I witnessed how the military regime at this time, unfortunately, it became a military dictatorship meanwhile again, how this military regime was shooting on people, on demonstrators. And this was really it was an awful experience. And for me, as a writer, as an intellectual, I considered as my duty to write about this because a lot of people told me there in the streets of Rangoon, tell the world what happened here and tell the people, and this is a very important point, and because the people told me, tell the rest of the world that we in Myanmar, we share the same values of democracy, of free elections, of freedom of speech. These values are universal. These values are not just European Western ideas. These are values, they have an importance for the entire world. And so I have to repeat, I see it as my duty to write about this and to write about the dreams, but also about the nightmares of the people not only in this region, but around the world.
Wonderful. I think that the purposeful traveling that you have described is somehow lacked in modern worlds, as you can see that a lot of people now travels only for their Instagram and their check-in account. So I think this is totally something that the youth has to find the purpose and also interest for their traveling. So you also share that you witnessed the dream, but also the nightmare of people, specifically in Myanmar. So how was the whole experience to you to see that people are suffering, but still they have the hope? How do you see towards it?
Yeah, I have to say that it was an extreme, tense and intense experience to be there in the streets of Myanmar. And then I went to Thailand and I met some people of the exile community in the exile community from Myanmar. There are journalists from an online magazine called the Irrawaddy, and they report what happened in Myanmar. And these people told me about their experience, their use when they were first time in prison in Myanmar in 1988. And it reminds me my experience in East Germany was a big difference because I was not in jail in East Germany. My father spent half in a year in a jail, in a prison in East Germany. But luckily, I was not a prisoner. I experienced only, let's say, only in quotation marks, the experience of being interrogated by the secret police. But when you are 18 years old and when you come in the room and people of the secret police tell you, be careful, not every door in these buildings goes back to the street. It's something what you can't forget for your whole life. And I think this experience is important, but it's not enough. When you are become a prisoner of your own experience, you are not able to create bridges to other people's experience. For me, memory and comparison and empathy are three very important things. And when I spoke with these exile journalists from Myanmar in Thailand, in Chiang Mai, we felt connected immediately. Me, the former kid from East Germany, they the former prisoners in Rangoon, and we found immediately a common language. Then it was the same experience I had in end of 2019, beginning of 2020, when I was traveling together with my partner to Hong Kong. We met people like the democracy activist Joshua Wong. He is in prison nowadays. And we didn't need so many words in order to understand that we share the same values. And this kind of solidarity and the way to speak about this and to the way to write about it is a very important part of my work.
Thank you for your beautiful story. I think that no matter where we come from or what our background is, as long as we can find the mutual interest and value, then we can connect like really easily together. And let's travel back in time. So I am assume that Myanmar is also one of your first trip because it was like back in the 80s, 90s. Could you recall your first trip and how it has shaped your interest towards the world and inspire your curiosity and also the way of purposeful traveling that you have right now?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Actually, I started my journeys to Asia. I think it was in 2001 when I traveled together with my partner to Cambodia and to Vietnam. And then I discovered mainland China. Then 2007, there was my experience in Burma, in Myanmar, and during the years, I went back several times to Hong Kong, and then also I made the experience of the Philippines. What is the Philippines on the surface a democracy, but I would consider is as an illiberal democracy. When you have elections in the Philippines, you have honestly spoken just to choose the choice between different kinds of thieves and of political and economical powerful families who don't care at all of the wealth and the situation of the majority of the population. With a lot of populism, and nowadays we see the result when the let's say criminal president like Duarte was followed by Ferdinand Marcos Jr., the son of the dictator Ferdinand Marcos, and the people still live in poverty. And also in the Philippines, people told me that they want to have a better life, and the people with whom I spoke, they were not just, let's say, intellectuals or people from the academic middle class, but also so-called simple people. In their own words, they told me that they want to have the right for, let's say, clear water, for education, for a life free of fear. And I have to repeat, all these all these encounters become for me a puzzle of the world where people are yearning and dreaming and fighting for fundamental human rights.
Thank you for your sharing. I think that it has bring you a good starting point as a puzzle for you to go on and to find the lab puzzle to put it in the whole pictures. And I can see that that you have witnessed a lot of course, good thing, but also a lot of bad thing about dictatorship, about the the regime currently going on at that time. Did you had a lot of negative feelings, or do you still have a good hope about the future that everything is gonna, people would fight for their freedom and they would get it in the end?
Very interesting. I wouldn't describe this as a negative feeling. I would consider this as a skeptical optimism, because at the end of the days, dictatorships always fail. At the end of the days, freedom, sometimes it takes a long way. Freedom will be stronger than repression. And without this hope, I couldn't write. And there are also a lot of good examples. Look, South Korea turned from a authoritarian dictatorship in a democracy, in a very lively democracy. And lively democracy means there are conflicts in the society, and the people are able to deal with these conflicts without violence. And the fact is that a lot of government changed in South Korea. Some of the former presidents are in prison. It means that the law system works, and the people can express their opinions. And the other positive example is, for instance, Taiwan. Taiwan was for a long time a dictatorship under Chiang Kai-shek, and after 87 it turned into a democracy, and now it's a very lively civil society with rights for minorities, with the rights for gay people to get married, with very impressive sensitivity for ecological and environmental issues. And it means it's an Asian society, and at the same time it's a democracy. And for this reason, I reject all the time the narrative of the power, because the power, they want to tell us, well, our culture is different, and everyone should live on his own culture, and we should not mix things. But this is the narrative of the power. When you ask to the people, they said, okay, what does it mean, tradition? And who has the power to give the definition? What is a tradition? And we want to make our own, create our own tradition of a good life. And for this reason, South Korea and even more Taiwan is for me a hope. And more or less, you see also good things in Malaysia, where things changed in a slow way, but it changed. And for this reason, I think I'm in a modest way still an optimist.
That's beautiful. I think this is a very good notation that you made there, that freedom would always wins in the end, and we can all looking forward to a good future in the end. So I also have noticed that when you accept my invitation podcast, you mentioned that you just back from beloved Tel Aviv. So I guess that this city must have a very special place in your heart. And I've never been to Israel. So could you share a little bit about the city and also the country?
Yeah, for me, Tel Aviv, this heterogeneous, liberal, heartwarming, and open city is an island of hope as well for me, because when you stroll through the streets of Tel Aviv, you see Jews and Israeli Arabs side by side. They're old women with the traditional Muslim scarves, buying some materials in some shops in Tel Aviv, and at the same time they are on their scooters, young cuties, men and women. You have elderly people. You have Jewish immigrants from Ethiopia. You have non-Jewish workers from Nigeria, from Thailand, and this is also for me a very nice experience, because there is the stereotype and the cliche that Asian people tend to be always obedient and always smiling, and they need rules and orders. But this is bullshit, because when I every time when I go to Tel Aviv and I see some Asian people, mostly Thai people, they learned Hebrew, and they learned already also the how to say the way of acting in Tel Aviv. So it means sometimes shouting in a friendly way, and sometimes tell the people stop to tell bullshit, or stop to do this and that. And they these are Asian women shouting on Hebrew to some old Israeli machos, and to tell them, listen, we are here as well, and we are now citizens. And then sometimes I see kids, Afro-Israeli kids, Asian Israeli kids playing together, and for me this is a wonderful experience. One of my favorite pop singers from the US, it's Neil Diamond, and once he wrote a song called "What a Beautiful Noise," and for me this beautiful noise is became a reality in the streets of Tel Aviv. All the things what we know about Israel, about occupation, about tension, these things are facts, and it's true, but it's not the whole picture. And for my writing, it's also impossible to show other aspects, maybe not known enough in the world outside. And of course, in Tel Aviv, almost everyone comes from other places. And when I speak to my Jewish friends, they have their parents or their grandparents, they have roots in East Europe. They survived the Holocaust, or they could flee from Europe already in the 30s. Other parts of the family are coming from South America, even from India, even from Yemen, or from Syria. Some of the grandmothers, they still speak Arab, and all these amazing mixture of backgrounds, of experiences, of tradition. That's very sexy, and it's a sexiness with brain, and this combination, I love it a lot. For this reason, I wrote 2 books on Tel Aviv, and also in my story, in my short story books, a lot of the short stories are placed in Tel Aviv.
Wow, I got goosebump already by just hearing your story. And I think that the most beautiful picture do not have only 1 or 2 colors, but it must has a lot of mixed colors together, mixed culture, mixed religions, backgrounds, etc., and how people come and live peacefully one another. And I think what you share is absolutely beautiful. So I think that we would come to also the last part of the podcast, although that I really love to hear a lot from you as well. So there are questions that I would always ask my guests in any episode. So what would you say to people out there to venture into the adventure? So is there any message that you want to share to people?
No, the only message I have, be curious, and give yourself the space to have open eyes. And at the beginning of our very inspiring conversation, you mentioned today the way that a lot of people they post just stuff for Instagram, and I mean there is nothing wrong with it, but I think the real pleasure is not to share your own travel pictures, but to share the experience of encounters when you meet people in these countries, when you come together. Can be on the level of conversation, can be on the level of erotic or even sexual encounters, including conversation, because I really believe in the honest dimension of the after sex conversation, where the people are relaxed, when there is no need to showing off, when the people share their private experience, their specific biography, and it's a great way. And I think when people are just on the way with their selfies, they miss something. I don't want to moralize. I don't want to teach how to travel, but I want to make the people a little bit curious, and also to show them. And I do it in my books. That's really amazing, adventurous, and gives a lot of joy and pleasure when people come together, when they share their experience in which way ever.
Wow, I think that's a very powerful message, that we don't seek for pictures and check-in, but we seek for experience, because I think that is way more precious. And looking forward to the future, do you have any big plans do you want to share, or any the next topic that you want to pursue, so that you can share to me and to audience?
Okay, wow, because next week I will spend my holiday in France together with my partner. He's original from the French islands in the Caribbean. And we will see his father. He becomes 90 at this moment. We will speak French. Meanwhile, me and my partner, we will speak a little bit German. And that's that's the way. And also, I think what is also very, very important to keep the contact among the generations, because the people in the 20s, on the 30s, on the 40s, on the 50s, whatever, there are, of course, maybe there are islands, but islands can get connected as well. And it's really beautiful to learn from each other. And this is the way I try to live, and also I try to travel.
Wow, this is also a great thing that you share. I also find that I have difficulties also to connect with my family because of the generation gap. But I think this is something that we should do to connect a lot of generations together and try to have the empathy towards one another. So yeah, I wish you have a great trip ahead. And time is running out. And thank you a lot for being on the podcast. I got so inspired, and I have so many meaningful messages today. Thank you a lot.
Thank you a lot too, and it was really an inspiring experience to have this podcast talk to you, and I look forward to listen your postcard also when you especially also when you invite other guests. I'm really curious to hear their experience. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And goodbye, and I hope to see you in others my upcoming podcast if possible.
Exactly. See you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.